Hello, welcome to the Saroy channel, and I have a wonderful Bigfoot encounter for you today to listen to. I've got a beautiful letter sent to me today from Sasha, and Sasha sends me this letter all the way from rural Tennessee. So we've got a really exciting Bigfoot encounter to listen to, and I gather it's quite a romantic story. So let's get started. Hello there. I have a really crazy Bigfoot encounter to share with you, and I do not care if your listeners believe it or not, because it really did happen to me, and it changed my life in a weird sort of way. Can you believe it? My Bigfoot encounter happened to me on my birthday of all days, and this is what happened, so here goes. I think your listeners should definitely fasten seatbelts, because this is going to be an emotional roller coaster for anyone who knows what heartbreak is all about. I grew up in rural Tennessee on the homestead with my mother in the early 80s. My mother stayed at home and raised all 8 of us children. I was the eldest. My father worked in the construction industry. We were not all very well off in those days, but being the eldest, I was lucky because I got the new clothes and my sisters had to wear my cast-offs. That was the only perk of being the oldest. I was 14 at the time. At the time I was 14, I was going out with the coolest boy in Tennessee. His name was Kevin, and he was extremely handsome with those lovely young boyish looks. And to top it all off, he came from a wealthy family, and so that made him even more desirable and attractive in my sight, even if that does sound a bit shallow. Anyway, on this particular day, which was my 14th birthday, I heard the sound of Kevin's father's Jeep driving up our dirt road to our front door. I could hear my mother saying, "Yes, she is." "Sasha," she called, "Kevin's here." I came out of my bedroom in the front room and looked up at Kevin with a pretended to be surprised look on my face. Kevin followed me to my bedroom and finally presented me with my present. "Happy birthday," he said, looking a little coy. "Thanks," I said, tearing open the present before I even opened the card. Kevin had money, so the present ought to be good, I secretly thought. I tried not to hide my disappointment as I looked at the bottle of Arnay cream. Why did he not get me the perfume? It's so much more expensive, I thought secretly. I mean, it's much more fancy than the cream, which wasn't nearly as nice. I tried to look pleased, but it was very difficult for me, and I gave him a hug. "Thanks," I said, tearing open his card and reading the contents of his birthday card, which read, "Happy birthday, Sasha. Love, Kevin." I was quick to notice that he had not put a single kiss under his name. That was a real bummer. "Thanks," I said, pretending to be pleased. "We need to talk," said Kevin suddenly. He was stumbling over his words and looking extremely awkward and avoiding any kind of eye contact with me. Oh, I thought, this does not look good. Kevin continued, I think we should break up." The shock of his words literally reverberated through my entire body like a tornado of emotional turmoil. "Why?" I asked. "Is there someone else?" Kevin looked guilty and shuffled his legs uncomfortably. "Well, sort of," he said. "Who is it?" I asked. "Isabella," he said uncomfortably. "We sort of started seeing each other." My heart literally jumped into my throat. Isabella! She was the beauty at our school. Long dark hair, blue eyes, and the fairest skin. I suddenly felt a surge of jealous rage and a sense of total rejection. "It's because she's prettier than me, isn't it?" I challenged him. Well," Kevin mumbled, "she is also funnier than you. I mean, you are a little bit serious." I was suddenly livid. "Well, I wanted to break up with you also," I lied. "You did?" Kevin looked surprised and shocked. "Yes," I said. "You're so boring and not that good looking either." I was determined to hurt him, and my words certainly did. I did not care that the love of my life had totally destroyed all my dreams of one day becoming his wife, I was devastated. Once Kevin left my house, I told my mother that I was experiencing a horrible migraine headache and I just needed to rest. "You poor thing, darling," she sighed. "And on your birthday, too." I closed my bedroom door behind me, stuffed up a few pillows and put them under my duvet so that it looked as if I was indeed sleeping in my bed, and I slipped into the woods behind our home. Now, I had been forbidden to go into the woods by both of my parents. They were worried about predators and also about the fact that the area in the woods is so thick and dense it would be easy to get lost. I did not care. I needed to expend my energy somehow. My heart was pounding, not from fear but from anger, from hurt, from feelings of rejection, from sheer heartbreak. I just felt as if my whole world had collapsed and fallen apart. I walked and I walked and I walked into the forest for an age. I kicked at the ground in anger and I screamed. I hit a couple of trees and I really hurt my wrists in the process. And then I just fell onto the ground in a heap and I sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed. For how long, I do not remember. The tears drenched my whole shirt, and I started to shiver because it was getting cold. Blinded by my tears, I rose up from the ground and stumbled over a broken log, and then I heard a loud crunch, that horrible sound of breaking bone. I had broken my ankle, and I was in no doubt about that. It was a horrendous sight. My foot was dangling off my leg in a weird sort of way, and I cannot quite remember how it looked, but I do remember it was dangling and hideous. The pain was horrendous. I knew I couldn't walk. I hobbled to the tree, clutching the stump and placing myself against it, seating myself onto the ground. Hopefully in a couple of hours my mother would raise the alarm and come looking for me. Would she look for me in the forest? I wasn't too sure. The shock of breaking my ankle had rattled me and kind of helped me gain some composure. The tears on my cheeks started to dry, and I sat there with my head between my knees, groaning in despair. Oh! The next thing I knew, I heard crunching behind me and leaves and twigs, and I was surprised to say the least. My mother had already come to find me, and so quickly, I thought. What a relief! It was not my mother that stood before me, but a very tall, hairy, massive creature, an animal such as I had never seen before. It was not a bear, not a human, not an ape. It was not a pretty animal. Its hair was matted and it smelt of urine. It was about 6 foot tall. Its chest was huge and about 4 feet across, and it had very defined muscles, a very slim waist, and very long, lean, muscular legs. The body was covered with fine black hair, and the creature only had one arm. I found myself wondering what had happened to his arm, which is a very strange thing to consider when you're facing a monster. I could not scream. I think I was just mesmerized by the creature, but not in a good way. I was emotionally spent, so anything the world threw at me now was not half as bad as my breakup with Kevin. The creature made a kind of chattering sound that you often hear monkeys make. It seemed like he was talking to me. I could sense that he wasn't being aggressive in any way, which was very reassuring. The creature reached down and threw some things on my lap. I looked down at the crawling slugs on my shirt, mixed with berries, and I let out the most horrified cry. I hated slugs. The creature looked at me in surprise. He looked a little puzzled by my reaction. Then he did something really strange. He walked around me and the tree and peed over the place, and then proceeded to place what looked like droppings around me. He then grunted, and the next thing I knew, he was gone. I could hardly believe what I'd seen. I did not know what the creature was. and the whole experience had been outer-worldly, if you know what I mean. I was pondering all of this when a white-tailed hare bobbed past me. It took one little sniff in my direction and whizzed away like greased lightning, as if it was suddenly terrified. This happened a couple more times, once with a squirrel and another time with a rabbit. It was a while before my mother had raised the alarm, and there was neighbours and friends searching for me. My mother had learnt from Kevin that he had broken up with me and understood why I had wandered off. "You are like me, darling," she assured me. "I never took heartbreak well as a child. It's not the end of the world, sweetheart," she promised. "There may be more heartbreaks along the way, but one day you'll find the one." Well, almost 30 years later, I did find the one, and guess who he was? My first love, Kevin, who I'm married to today. Of course, he tells me that I was always much prettier than Isabella, and yes, I'm much more fun than she ever was. Do I believe him? I do not know, but the main thing is I married the man, and I love him so much, and as far as I'm concerned, I hit the jackpot. I did end up going to hospital and having an operation on my ankle, and it took a while to come right, I have to admit, but eventually it did. I did learn later what the creature was that I saw, and I realized that he was trying to help me. In some way, my humanity spoke to him. Perhaps he heard me crying and understood what that was all about. I believe the grubs and the berries were a snack for me. I also think he peed around me to protect me from predators. So yes, I think you could say that Bigfoot helped me on the day my heart was broken by that horrible boy Kevin, who finally became my husband. So if you want to know if Bigfoot is real, I would say yes, he definitely is, because I've seen him myself, minus one arm, of course. However, I'm not asking you to believe me, but this is my story, and I hope you enjoyed it. We loved your story. Thank you so very much. Good night and good evening to all of you. Until next time.